Hi everyone, and welcome to Uncovered Vintage Fashion Magazine Review. I'm Stephanie, and I've been collecting and selling vintage fashion magazines for over 20 years.
And I'm Morley. I'm a former copywriter and am now an award-winning playwright and screenwriter.
Together, we will examine some of your favorite vintage fashion magazines from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
On Uncovered, we'll discuss some of the magazine's models, layouts, and did I mention the models?
And we'll also review some of the ads and articles that make these magazines such a great piece of pop culture history. So, fasten your seatbelts and let's get uncovered. Today, our very special guest began his career at the tender age of 15 and rose to the top of his field with his creative and inventive hairstyles. He has worked with top fashion photographers for the most prestigious publications, including Vogue, Cosmopolitan, and Harper's Bazaar. Models and celebrities that he has worked his magic on include Elizabeth Taylor, Farrah Fawcett, and Brooke Shields. In addition to all this, our very accomplished guest has made the time to create his gefilte fish recipe, which he continues to perfect to this day. Uncovered Vintage Fashion Magazine Review Podcast is delighted to welcome Harry King.
Hello.
Hello, Harry.
Hi, Harry. Welcome aboard.
Hello.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
So, Harry, could you tell us a little bit about your early life in the UK and what led to your first job?
Okay, well, I started work, as you said, when I was 15 as an apprentice. And my basic job there was washing hair, sweeping floors, wiping mirrors. And once a week, we would have a model night where one of the seniors stayed behind to teach us. I was in this swank shop in Baker Street, and I lasted about 6 months because, quite honestly, at 15, I didn't know my ass from my elbow. And so I just started to stay away, and the back of where I lived were tennis courts, and I would just go down and play tennis every day. Then I got another job, and that lasted about 7 months, again, a junior, washing hair. But I worked under Mr. Lionel, who would say to me, okay, pin up the back, do this, do that. And it was an incredible experience. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. And I'm now about 18, and I was on the floor, as they say. I had lots of clients, and a lot of my clients were going to Vidal Sassoon and Leonard's. So I was seeing, to have the hair cut, they wouldn't let me cut their hair. So I was seeing the latest haircuts, which was really fantastic. And during that time, I was coming to New York every year for holidays and the south of France. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit again, and I'm 21 or 20, somewhere around there. And one of my friends said he'd got an interview in a shop in Bond Street. And Bond Street is the swank street in London, very upmarket. So I thought, well, if he can get a job there, I can get a job there. So I got an interview, and I did get a job there. And it was a brand new salon that was part of a makeup company called Inoxa. Inoxa was did stage makeup, and in this place in Bond Street, the top 3 floors were beauty, like massage, makeup, and everything. So they opened this shop downstairs, and I started there. Clients who came in were, I met Monica Vitti, I met Gypsy Rose Lee, I had a long chat with Leslie Caron, and many, many stars. And that was the beginning. And they started to send me out to do photo shoots. And the photo shoots were for things like country life, nothing really, and I can't really remember, to be honest with you, but it was an incredible experience to go into the studio to work. So then while I was working locally in one place, I had called Leonard to get an interview. And the receptionist answered the phone, asked me where I was working, and I told her, and she said they didn't have a spot right now. So now I'm working in Bond Street. I call Leonard's again, and the receptionist says, yes, come along for an interview. So then I call a brand new shop that had opened called Michael John. Michael and John had both worked for Leonard. And Michael was the editorial queen, king, however we want to call him. Lovely man, actually, and his work was genius. One of the first people to go out and do photo shoots. So I go to Leonard for my interview with my two models and do hair. He wants me to start work for him. Same week, I go to Michael John, do hair, same models. I'm terrible, but Michael liked me. And so he hired me. So now I had to make a decision. Do I want to be a small fish in a big pond, Leonard, or do I want to be a big fish in a small pond, Michael John, who had just opened? I would be their first hairdresser. Wow. So I chose Michael John. Leonard called me up and was furious.
I bet.
That's not bad. I was a nobody. Leonard furious with the nobody. So anyway, I start work at Michael John, and my first day there is like, I'm gobsmacked, because it's like Michael's clients were beyond. As I start, and everyone wore Gucci shoes, which was hilarious to me, you know, because I wasn't yet a label queen. So Michael's clients were people like Sheila Rivera, Juliette Prowse, Claire Bloom, Princess Anne, Princess Alexandra, every movie star that was going, every celebrity. It was kind of fabulous. So I was there for my first 5 months. I totally lost my confidence. I was out of my league, but Michael drags me to his side and he says, okay, Lorna Cattell is coming in from Queen magazine. And basically, if I don't do her hair great, I'm out. So Lorna comes in and introduces me to her two hair pieces, Susan and another name. And she and I hit it off. I do her hair. She loves me, books me the next week for a photo shoot for Queen magazine before it became Harper's and Queen, and big success. She starts using me. Then another editor called Cherry Twist takes me to Paris to do my first collections with a photographer called Duffy, who was one of the 4 British photographers, along with David Bailey, Norman Parkinson, blah, 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 blah. And so now I'm on my way. Michael goes on a tour with Princess Anne. I invent a haircut. It was called the lion's mane.
Yes.
And it was short layers getting longer, 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 longer. It became mole hair eventually in America. And that was a huge success. Now I'm a star. I'm working in London. Everybody wants me. My clientele were pretty cool. Every top model of that time. I'm working for magazines. I'm giving seminars, blah, blah, blah. Then Michael and John are going to open in New York. And they're going to put me in as manager. They got a shop on 57th Street between Madison and Park. And then they decide they're not going to do it. They were scared. And they were scared to put me in as manager. They thought I would become too American. And also, London was going through a terrible time. The miners and the electricians were on strike, and we were put on a 3-day working week. So anyway, I decide I'm going to come anyway. Fashion was over in London. So I come to America. I'm in New York every year anyway. So I go to Kenneth for an interview, and it was too hoity-toity, and I didn't really like it. It was too much like where I was working. So then I get in touch with St. Andre, and which was this huge 4-floor emporium of hair.
Wow.
On, yes, 57th Street. The second floor, there were 39 hairdressers. The 4th floor was shiatsu massage, the PR department, Wendy Whitelaw and Joey Mills doing makeup, and 6 colorists. So I go in and I meet with Andre, the owner, and I said, my real name is David. And I said, my name is David, and I'm the creative director at Michael John in London. And I'm moving to New York, and you are the only place I would consider working for.
Wow.
He hires me,
Wow.
takes me out for a drink, and tells me, well, David, you have to change your name. Not Nancy Smith.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about Nancy later.
So
Why
I said, pardon me?
Why did you have to change your name?
Because there was a David there.
Okay.
And it would be too confusing. So I thought, well, I never thought I'd have to do this because, you know, I was 30 and I didn't think I'd have to change my name at 30, but I understood. So I wasn't going to be a Charlie because my boss wanted something kind of English.
Wow.
I didn't really like the name Henry, but the King Henrys called themselves Hal or Harry. So I thought Harry King will look good because I'd already had stuff come out in London with David Bailey, Norman Parkinson, Clive Arrowsmith. You know, as I said, I was on my way. So, all right, I'm now Harry King. I come back to London, finish everything up, go back to New York, and start work at St. Andre as Harry King.
Wow.
And I'd gone from doing 28 clients a day. I'm now doing 2 clients a day. I'm a nobody with a change of name. Am I talking too much?
No.
It's actually fascinating.
It is.
Just as an aside, I'm friends with this guy. His real name is David, and he was part of this Canadian rock group called Klaatu. I don't know if you've heard of them. But because there were so many Davids around, he changed his name to D. So it's kind of funny. So he goes by D Long as opposed to David Long.
So should I continue? Oh, you can ask me questions.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, and when you told me this a couple of nights ago, I laughed for like 10 minutes. So who is Nancy Smith?
I've forgotten about that.
Who is Nancy Smith? And what is her relationship to you?
And when can we get her on our show?
All right, Nancy. Nancy is part of my imagination. I had done a lot of editorial work, and I wanted to take photographs. And in fact, I changed my name from Harry King to David King to take photos because I wanted people to take me seriously. I was still doing hair, but I was doing advertising work with no credit. And Scavullo, I saw him at a party, and he comes over to me and he takes my hand and he gets down on his knees and he says, please come back to the studio. I can't replace you. And I'm not going to mention names, but I know the hairdressers that he was using, and they were from before me, actually, before I arrived in America. And I knew, I had developed a style that Scavullo loved, and Helen Gurley Brown loved, and everybody loved, yes. And so I said, look, I'll come and work for you, but I can't use my name. He said, well, you've changed your name before, you know, from David to Harry. He said, do it again. So I said, all right. So I thought, no girls, no women get any credit as hairdressers. I'm going to use the name Nancy Smith.
Brilliant.
That is so cool.
Brilliant.
So I did some Cosmo covers. I did some Bazaar covers under the name of Nancy Smith. So when they first hit the newsstand, there was an editor called Diane Smith. She actually started, I think, maybe with Bazaar. She did Self. She did many magazines, and then she went on to be Sports Illustrated swimsuit editor. She's fabulous. So we're having lunch. So she said, maybe you know the answer to this. Who is Nancy Smith? She's suddenly doing all these covers with Scavullo, and she's come out of nowhere, and it's also my sister's name. I said, Diane, it's me. And I told her the story, and she screamed with laughter. But, you know, I'd forgotten that. When you brought it up the other day, or it reminded me, it was so funny to me.
That's amazing.
Like I said, I was laughing for 10 minutes after that. Like,
what a
so
great story.
Funny. It's amazing. So in addition to a top hairstylist, you're also an amazing photographer. Some of your subjects have included Andy Warhol, Gia Karangi, and Raquel Welch. And I was just going to ask what led to the transition to photography. Have you always loved photography?
Oh, I've had a camera since I'm 18. And I love taking pictures. And I would always be inspired when I worked with great photographers. And I was just snapping. But I wasn't taken seriously. I'd been put in a pigeonhole. I was a famous hairdresser. And I tried it for 5 years. And one day, 2 girls came on a go-see. And one of them said, hey, you know what they're saying about you? You're Harry King, really famous photographer, snapping away. You're really good, but nobody's taking you seriously. So I put the camera down, and that was the finish. And I went back to doing hair because I was broke. And it was, I mean, I have an amazing archive. I mean, I shot everybody. Every model. Rene Russo used to come hang out in my apartment.
Wow.
And for those listeners, Harry's holding up
the most beautiful photo of Rene Russo.
Wow, that's incredible.
Oh my.
Harry, I'm assuming that at some point you probably worked with Albert Watson. Is that correct?
Oh, I worked with Albert. I worked with Avedon. I worked with Irving Penn. I worked with Lord Snowdon. I worked with Chris von Wagenheim. I worked with Arthur Elgort, Deborah Turbeville, Dwayne Michael.
Did they ever?
No one really.
Did they ever give you any tips, photography tips?
No, I mean, you work as a team. My upbringing was the photographer was in charge. And the photographer had his lighting, he had his setup, and you worked within that. I was also taught that I wasn't the star of the booking, nor was the makeup. We were creating a team effort for a photograph. And that was my upbringing. I've listened to some makeup hairdressers who've said to me, oh, I worked on a booking and I blew the hairdresser or makeup artist away. And I'm thinking, why? You're part of a team here.
Right.
You know, it's just to create a photograph. I remember Polly Mellon saying to me once, there are no stars on this booking, we're all stars. And I thought that's a fantastic thing to say. She was a great person.
How nice that she recognized that.
That's nice. Well, one of our favorite stars is Sandy Linter. And I'm wondering if you could tell us maybe a humorous story about Sandy, because she's so great.
Well, I've got 1,000.
Well,
And some X-rated ones too. But we won't go there. I met Sandy first week I arrived in New York, because at St. Andre, she was dating a hairdresser who was working there. And we chatted, and then 5 months later, I'm doing my first job for Vogue, and she was the makeup artist. And we had an incredible working relationship. Incredible. She is a wonderful human being,
We love Sandy.
yeah.
a wonderful makeup artist, and fun. I mean, you know, we did some iconic stuff together.
But do you have any humorous stories, like one you can share with our listeners?
Oh, I'll have to think about that.
Well, actually, you and Sandy both appeared in this Netflix documentary about Studio 54.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen photos of the two of you, cool kids going out for the night. And I'm just wondering if you have any crazy experiences that you could share about Studio 54.
Well, I don't think I was with her, but I mean, I went to opening night.
Wow.
Wow.
And I wasn't even sure if I was going to go, actually, because I hadn't heard much of a buzz, but I got the invite. In fact, it's framed on my living room wall. It was huge.
Wow.
And so I showed up, and it was packed outside. So I get in, and I'm looking around, and I go upstairs, and it was empty. It was all seats, because it was a theater. And they'd ripped out the downstairs for dancing and the bar and everything. So I go upstairs, and in the front row, I see a very gorgeous girl, a pale black girl, in a Azadine Alaya dress, I think, giving a very handsome, also man of color, quite young. And I thought, oh, this is fabulous here. But there's also, going back to Sandy, I mean, Studio 54 was amazing. They actually threw a party for me.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And Sandy and I one day were standing hand in hand, staring at a couple in a banquette. It was Gina Lollobrigida and what was the Israeli general's name? Moshe Dayan.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and we were staring at them. And there is a great story of Sandy and I on a trip somewhere. And I've got a picture of that too. And she is in skin tight fuchsia tights and a little top. And I'm holding my glass with my Armani jacket on and jeans. And a photographer from the hotel took our picture. And the next day, we go down to check out stuff, and everyone is like looking at us. And somebody says, "Your picture is over there."
Oh,
no,
that's
Sandy
cool.
Sandy's lovely.
She's
I love
beautiful.
Sandy.
Were you also into the club scene in London, like the Bag O' Nails Club? I know is super popular.
No, well, I went to the very first disco in London. It was called the Crazy Elephant. And
okay.
I'm talking about 1966, 67. And they let me in, and I was so thrilled. In fact, one time I came back from the south of France, and my girlfriend picked me up at the airport. And I put my bag in the back of her car, and we went straight to the Crazy E, as it was known.
Huh.
And it was small, and the back wall had every celebrity's name where they'd signed it.
Oh, wow.
But I went to a place called Dolly's. I went to a place, can't remember. Senior moment, darling.
That's great.
That's cool. A lot of our listeners are fans of the model Gia Karanji. I know that you knew her as well as you had worked with her. You have photographed her. You've done her hair. Are there any memories of Gia that you could share? Anything about her that would surprise those of us that did not know her?
Well, I get really pissed off, quite honestly, when people put posts up about her, how sad she looks, how depressed she looks, how you can see the drugs, blah, 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 blah. They didn't know her. They hadn't met her. They may be a photograph taken of someone without makeup on. You don't look that great without makeup. But my earliest memory of her was I was working at Scavullo's, and she comes in on a go-see. And she comes in her signature look, jeans, white shirt, black leather jacket, and Scavullo's partner, stylist, boyfriend, Sean Burns, was there. He'd seen Gia at the Mud Club probably, and he got her to come into the studio, and she gets on the set. Scavullo starts shooting pictures of her, and I thought, I haven't seen anyone like this for a long, long time. This girl's going to be a star. And she was. And I always had very happy moments with Gia. And something else that pissed me off, I shot video of her up in my apartment. Sandy was here. It was their first kiss. Andrea Blanche and Ariella was here. And I shot a very blurry video, and a documentary filmmaker who was making the self-destruction of Gia wanted to see what I had. So I took up the video to show it to him, and he made a copy while he was looking without my permission, and he used it without my permission in his video of Gia snorting coke. I mean, this was a very private moment. I would never have allowed that.
Of course not. I would think, I mean, I've seen the video and I know what you're referring to, and I didn't think that would be legal to do.
It was dreadful. He stole my video.
Wow.
And all the pictures of mine that are in it, he wanted copies of them to see what he might use. And the usual procedure is they get back to you and they say, I would like to use this. How much is that? And blah, blah, blah. He used all my pictures. Everything.
That is horrible.
Disgusting.
Well, talk about sleaze lowlife.
Yeah, that is terrible.
Yeah, well, we're sorry that happened to you and it happened to Gia.
Has it always been your ambition to be a hairstylist? And could you envision your life having gone in a different direction? Now, I know that you were interested in tennis, which is something I learned.
Well,
photography.
I became a hairdresser because I was brought up basically by my Russian grandparents. And there was a big family, lots of aunts and uncles. And my grandfather, at one time, had 6 clothing shops. But when I was born, he only had 1 left. And I was always there at the shop, as we called it. And when he died, we'd gone from rich to poor, basically. He never told my grandmother there was no money. And my grandmother was left with the shop. She'd never been to business before. And at 65, she started to go.
Wow.
And so I had to help. On a Saturday, I was 14 years old, and I was selling clothes in the market. And I was this little shy boy, and I had to help. There was no such word as no. I was told I had to do something, and I did it. So one day I'm in the shop, and I'm 15, and one of my aunties said to me, so what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I don't know. She said, you should be a hairdresser. You'll make a lot of tips. And I'd gone out with this girl, Julia Burns, 3 months earlier. And she said, why don't you be a hairdresser? And I said, wash people's dirty heads? I'm not going to do that. But it was very fashionable at that time. It was the late 50s. And if you weren't going to stay on at school, you'd work in a boutique, which was happening, or you'd be a hairdresser.
Huh.
So I didn't go to school the next day. I went out and looked for a job.
It's amazing. You know, Harry, we're probably going to be coming to New York this fall. If we do, you'll have to dust off your old tennis racket. What do you say?
Well, I haven't played in years. I can't run anymore.
Perfect.
I'm old boy. You know,
Yeah.
I swim every day.
Well, then we'll play for money. So that's perfect.
Harry, what would you like people to know about you that they don't already know?
Well, I'm a lover of life and joy and family and friends, and keep it simple and love yourself.
Well, that's
follow your
wonderful.
follow your dreams, because you are your own creation. And I talk from experience. I made it happen for myself. You can make it happen for yourself.
That is beautiful and inspiring. And for our listeners, we hope that you've enjoyed listening to Harry King. And we assume and we hope that you're just as wild about Harry as we are.
As I am. And Nancy Smith.
And Nancy Smith as well. And David King.
And David.
So you got 7 more people. You'll have Minion, Harry.
Now, if people would like to know more about you, Harry, where can they go?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Harry with 4 R's, because I couldn't get Harry with another change.
You know, I was wondering about that actually. When I'm looking for you, I have to go HARRR.
YKING.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm on Facebook, Harry with 2 R's, I think. I don't know.
Yes, it is.
And I don't tweet particularly. I do go there every now and then, but I'm useless as it. I mean, quite honestly, I do too much on the internet. And I should let you know that I've just finished my screenplay. And
really?
Yeah. And it's fabulous. And it takes place in the 70s, before AIDS. And it's filled with sex and drugs, and it's based on a true story. And I mean, I've embellished a lot of stuff, but some people might recognize themselves, but it's a fabulous story, and I'm really excited about that.
That's tremendous. Now, I don't know if you know anything about me, but I'm also a screenwriter.
Oh, how cool.
And a playwright.
Okay.
And if you ever want a set of eyes to look at it, and we can talk about inciting incidents and things like that, I'm just working on my 3rd screenplay right now.
Well, this actually is my 3rd one.
Oh.
But my first one, nothing happened with it. And my second one, I showed it to an agent in California who slammed it down on the desk and said, when you present a screenplay, it has to be totally in the right format, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And I left with my tail between my legs, and a year and a half later, my movie was on the screen. But I don't believe Kenneth Branagh really stole my movie, because there were 3, I was told by a girlfriend of mine, 3 movies were going round the same time, same story as mine.
You know, it's a tough industry, Harry. My first screenplay was supposed to be filmed in England, actually. And then the investor got caught in a Me Too moment, and that went to the wayside. But we should talk. I can definitely help you with that. Final Draft is the premiere.
That's what I'm using.
Good. So,
but I'm really proud of this. I think my screenplay is really cool.
Great. Well, I can definitely help you get it out there as well. We can definitely talk. And but thank you so much again for taking the time to join us. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been an honor, Harry.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Uncovered Vintage Fashion Magazine Review Podcast.
Uncovered was produced by Morley Schulman, with music by David Renda and logo design by Alan Lipman.
So remember, if you liked Uncovered, be sure to tell 2 friends about it.
And they'll tell 2 friends.
And so on, and so on, and so on.